Hello guys, welcome to my channel. As you can see in the picture today, we will start the part 1, what if Naruto received Shisui's eye instead of Itachi, and fell for MABUI. The sky was just setting on the village of Konoha, as Shisui started making his way back to the Uchiha compound. He and Itachi had just finished talking by their favorite waterfall, discussing the latest details of the Uchiha coup. They had been lucky enough for the clan to have to postpone the coup, due to a lacking number of Uchiha in the shinobi force. Higaku Uchiha had decided to wait for a couple years until there were more Uchiha shinobi capable of such a feat before they would act. No doubt he was counting on his second son Sasuke to be a prodigy like his brother, in order for him to also be able to effectively participate in the coup. Itachi was going to report what had happened to the Hokage and elders, and Shisui was heading over to Uchiha compound. Fugaku would most likely try to get information on Itachi from him, but Shisui would just give him the usual, "He's just under a lot of stress" spiel. He was in the market district of the village when he heard cries for help. Immediately his shinobi instincts kicked, and he darted off towards the origins of the sound. He arrived at the outskirts of the red light district, where he was met with the horrible sight of what could pass as a bloody corpse of a child. The child had blonde hair, but that was all that he could gather of his natural appearance. His face had 2 black eyes, with multiple other bruises. His shirt was torn to shreds by the sight of him, and carved onto his chest with the characters for demon. Under his bloody chest in black ink was the only part of his body that wasn't at the least bruised. An intricate seal, spiraling in the center of it, was drawn on his stomach. Next to the child's head in blood-dried hair was a pair of green goggles, the left lens being cracked. But perhaps the most gruesome sight was his right arm, or more so the fact that it wasn't there. The entire arm, all the way up to just a little bit under his shoulder, was lying a few feet from him, completely black and charred, and bent in ways that it should not be. The leftover stump of what was once the child's left arm was bleeding profusely, soaking up into the child's beige shorts and orange shirt. "Hello," he whimpered, afraid that the villagers had come back to finish the job. Part of him wished they would, just to end his suffering. He knew that he wouldn't die from this, no matter what the villagers did to him, even when they were actually trying to kill him, he never died. Shisui picked him up slowly, making sure that he wasn't put in any more pain than he already was. As soon as he was confident that the child was comfortable, he immediately began running towards the hospital. Going by the rooftops, he arrived in a matter of seconds. He rushed up towards the desk. "This child needs a doctor immediately. He's been severely beaten, his chest has been carved on, and his right arm has been severed." The nurse took a look at the child in his arms, and her face softened. "Oh God, it's Naruto again. Come with me, quickly now." Shisui followed her as they swiftly walked through the hospital and into an empty room. He laid the child, Naruto she said it was, on the medical bed. "I'll be back with the best doctor I can get. Please stay with him." Sometimes, the civilians try to break in to continue their little beating sessions. She arrived back soon enough with a team of doctors, and Shisui was asked to wait outside of the room. He sent a clone to inform the Hokage what he had stumbled upon, then waited. The Hokage had arrived soon after, but hadn't said anything to him. He just looked completely distraught, and stared at the floor in silence. A couple of hours had passed before the two of them were brought back into the room. With Naruto cleaned up, he was able to get a better look at him. He had wild, untamed blonde hair. Please refer to the picture for this story, which again, is not mine. With 3 thin, faint lines on either side of his face. When his eyes were opened, they revealed a stunning pair of shining lavender eyes. His chest was bandaged up, still leaving the markings on his stomach visible. His face was already showing signs of healing, as most of the bruises had either disappeared or turned to a fainter color. And sadly, his right shoulder was bandaged, the missing of his arm very noticeable. "How are you feeling?" Naruto the Hokage asked, causing a look of pain to flicker across Naruto's face. He didn't respond, instead choosing to look down, causing a few held-back tears to fall from his eyes. "I can't be a shinobi, Gigi. How am I supposed to become a great shinobi when I can't even perform hand signs? I'll be lucky if I can learn to even properly hold chopsticks with my left hand," Naruto exclaimed, his tears streaming down his eyes to his chin. His left hand was shaking in a fist, his whole body soon also trembling with it. Shisui and Hiruzen both looked down as well, sad at Naruto's situation. Both knew that it wasn't their fault, but Hiruzen kept thinking that maybe if he had been more protective of Naruto, and had the power to be more strict with the civilians, then Naruto would be able to be a shinobi like he dreamed. He already had too much to deal with, and now with an arm missing, not only would it be immensely more difficult to become a shinobi, but no doubt the children and adults of the village would take advantage of his new disability. He was sad to say that the will of fire had diminished. The villagers and shinobi of Konoha had become caught in the cycle of hatred that the world was victim to. And Shisui knew as well that it was not his fault, but he kept thinking that maybe if he had been there sooner, he could have defended Naruto. He could have stopped and reported the villagers and shinobi who had done this to a defenseless child. He swore to himself there that he would do everything in his power to fix this, and to make this child a shinobi. "Hey, who are you?" Naruto said to Shisui, his lavender eyes still brimming with tears, red and puffy from his crying. Shisui stayed silent for a moment, thinking if he should give it to him. After a while, he decided. I'm Shisui Uchiha. I'm the one who brought you here. A brief pause was made before Shisui continued. And I'm the one who's going to be taking care of you from here on out, he said, causing everyone's eyes to widen. Naruto's in particular looked like his eyes would pop out of their sockets. A faint smile came onto his face, before it disappeared and was replaced by another frown. Are you going to be like the others? Are you saying that, just so that you can treat me like garbage, just so that you can beat and torture me like everyone else? Is that why you saved me, just so you can have a go? By this point, Naruto was crying again, and his left hand was clenched so hard it was drawing blood. Hiruzen felt a stab of pain at the words. Most didn't know, but there had been a couple of times when some people had claimed that they were going to take care of or adopt Naruto, and he was sad to admit that most of those times had been just so that they could hurt Naruto. He would have done something about it, but the laws made it so that if someone wanted to adopt, he couldn't stop them until after they had done something to the child, which by then would be too late. But through the stab of pain he felt, there was a light of hope he saw. If Shisui was made Naruto's guardian, if he were the one to take care of him and train him, not only would Naruto have a magnificent role model and caretaker, but if he could adapt to Naruto's new situation, he would be able to properly defend himself. With Shisui's help, Naruto might be able to continue attending the academy. He could still become a shinobi. I promise, Naruto, I promise on my position of a shinobi, that I will never hurt you. I promise that I will train you to the best of my ability, and then to train you even more. I promise to care for you, and to heal you, and to be the best guardian I can be for you. I promise to do everything in my power to replace your arm. I promise to do all these things and more. I give you my word. And I never go back on my word, that's my nindo. 1 week later, Shisui and Naruto both walked out of the hospital, Naruto having finally been released. They had said a couple of goodbyes to the doctors and nurses there, after Naruto had been dropped there for the millionth time, had come to accept Naruto for who he was, and enjoyed the optimistic atmosphere he brought around with him. Shisui had taken the week off of missions to get to know Naruto, before he took him to live with him. He had learned that Naruto had a strict diet of ramen and more ramen, which he would make sure to change, and was known for causing notorious pranks and escaping. He had even told Shisui of the time when he had snuck into the Anbu headquarters, and marked all of the Anbu masks with various drawings or profanity, which Shisui had gotten confirmed by Itachi. While this was slightly upsetting, Itachi did have to admit that it meant Naruto had a talent for stealth. Naruto had learned a fair bit about Shisui as well. Shisui had been in the Anbu Black Ops, but quit after a while to continue being an ordinary jonin, stating that Anbu wasn't for him. He had graduated at a very early age, which made Naruto upset because it meant that he was far behind being the best shinobi. Shisui's favorite food was sushi, favorite color was green, favorite pastime was spar with his good friend and cousin Itachi, and his dream was to hopefully bring peace to the world. Shisui had also taken the liberty of getting Naruto new clothes. Naruto was currently dressed in black pants and shinobi sandals with a grey long-sleeved shirt. On the shoulders of the shirt was the emblem for the Konoha Military Police Force, and on the back was the Uchiha fan. Shisui knew that he would get a good scolding for giving a non-Uchiha shirt with their crest, but it was something that Shisui had free access to. But the way Naruto's face lit up when he had received it would make the scolding worth it. Naruto had explained that it was just a way of showing that he was part of a real family, even if the family was only Shisui. As they made their way to the Uchiha compound, Naruto looked up to Shisui. Hey Shisui, can I ask you a question? Shisui looked down to see the blonde's curious face. Sure Naruto, what's your question? How are we going to train you with me only having one arm and everything? He said a bit jokingly, though Shisui could see the faint look of pain that Naruto's face held. And how are we going to get me a new arm? That seems pretty impossible. Shisui looked back in front of him. Well, the first thing we have to do is make sure you can use your left hand. So we'll start with basic exercises like writing and drawing, then move on to more shinobi related things, like throwing shuriken. Once we get the hang of all those, then I'll teach you to use one-handed seals to perform jutsu. It'll be very difficult, but with enough training, I believe you can do it. To be completely honest Naruto, I don't know how to get your arm back. The only person who might have even been capable of growing one back was the first Hokage. And the only medic nin who could even be the slightest bit up to the challenge would be Lady Tsunade, and she's been missing for quite some time. But I'll find a way, and if there's not a way, I'll make one. Naruto was once again stunned by Shisui's resolve to help him. None had ever been so willing to help him, or to go to such lengths. Naruto knew just as much as anybody that getting a new arm was most likely impossible, but Shisui was going to stop at nothing to fulfill his promise to Naruto. And I never go back on my word, that's my ninja way. Shisui, Naruto started, getting the older boy's attention once again. I think I like your nindo. Shisui smiled at this, and reached his hand down to ruffle Naruto's hair. Naruto tried to swat the hand away, but was only met with Shisui's laughter. Well, if you like it, I guess I'll just have to pass it on down to you. After all, it's a sensei's duty to pass on his ideals to his students. Scene break. With Naruto finally settled down and asleep in his new home with Shisui, Shisui silently snuck out of the house and to the waterfall. Itachi was already waiting for him at the meeting place, standing still facing the waterfall. He turned when Shisui had landed behind him, a small smile on his face, only to vanish when he saw Shisui's serious expression. "I need a favor, Itachi." Itachi was stunned by Shisui's statement. Shisui rarely asked for anything, and when he did it was usually to poke fun at him. His face told that this was not one of those times. "What do you need?" "I need you to help me create an artificial arm." Itachi was even more confused by this. "I'm sorry, I don't understand. You know Naruto Uzumaki, right? The Jinchuriki for the 9 tails." When he received a nod, he continued. "1 week ago, some villagers attacked him. It was brutal. When I first saw him, I didn't even know if he was alive. I got him to the hospital, and he's completely recovered. I've become his guardian now as well." By now, Itachi was completely lost. "You've become his guardian, why is that?" "If you had been there, you'd have understood. This kid needs someone, and I'll be damned if I let the kid live on the streets for 1 more day. He needs to be taken care of and trained, and I'm going to be the one to do it." "Alright, I suppose I understand. But what part of this requires an artificial arm?" The villagers cut off his right arm in their attack. A moment of silence was shared between the two, Itachi finally fully comprehending just why Shisui felt the need to take Naruto under his care. "So is there anything you can do, anything you could think of that could help me?" Itachi thought hard about the subject, but was coming up short. "I can't think of anything. The only human alive who possessed great enough regenerative abilities was Hashirama Senju, and he's," Itachi said, before a look of realization came to his face. "Tenso." It was cloudy in Konoha, storm clouds looming in the distance. Thunder was occasionally heard as 2 figures ran through the trees, one behind the other. The first dropped to the ground below, taking their fighting stance just as the second dropped down. Both stayed still for a moment, the first still in their stance, while the second stood nonchalantly a ways away. The first suddenly started running towards the other, just as raindrops started to fall on them. A punch was thrown, which was immediately blocked. Then a kick. The second figure caught it, and used the captured leg to throw them a ways away. The first figure spun around in the air, landing gracefully on both feet, and quickly running back towards the second. The second finally obliged to the first's unspoken wishes, running towards them as well to participate in the fight. The fight lasted for hours, both soaked in a mixture of their own sweat, and the heavy water raining down on them. They lay on the ground, covered in bruises and their bodies aching. With every slight movement they groaned, though you could easily see they both wore gigantic smiles on their face. "Your training is paying off, Naruto. I sure can feel it. Why do you punch so damn hard anyways?" "Well, you're the one who said not to hold back. That includes how hard I punch you, Shisui. Is this your way of telling me you want me to go easy on you? If that's the case, maybe I should be teaching you." They both laughed, before Shisui stood up, giving Naruto his hand. Naruto accepted, his left hand grabbing it and pulled himself up. Together they started walking back to their house, albeit slowly due to their hurting bodies. Everywhere they walked, people looked at them funny, finding it strange that 2 boys could look so happy and carefree, when they looked so beaten up, and were being drenched in the pouring rain. It was exactly 3 years since Naruto had been taken in by Shisui, and it had been the best of 3 years of their life. Naruto was about to turn 10 years old, in just 1 week, and couldn't be more excited. Shisui had promised that this year's gift would be the best he had ever gotten. No matter how many times he begged or how hard he pleaded, Shisui refused to even give the slightest hint of what he was going to be given. They finally arrived back at their house, and each went into their respective rooms to dry off and change clothes. This was one of the things that had surprised Naruto the most when he had first moved in with Shisui. Never before had Naruto had a room that belonged solely to him. He had a shared room with many orphans, and then was kicked out onto the streets as a child. The closest thing he ever had to a room before was his own box, and those always got destroyed easily with the rain. Naruto took his shirt off, revealing once again the seal tattooed onto his stomach and his lone arm. He never found out what the seal on his stomach was, and whenever he had asked the Hokage Shisui, they just brushed off the question. It made Naruto suspicious, and he had more than once tried to find out on his own. But with his limited knowledge in sealing, which was none, he couldn't for the life of him even begin to fathom what his was. Though, as Naruto rubbed the spot where his right arm used to be, he relented that he'd rather have his arm back than understand the markings on his stomach. He could remember perfectly the day he had to go back to the academy after having lost it. Flashback. It had been 2 weeks since Naruto had been released from the hospital, and 1 week since he had started living with Shisui, and now it was finally the day Naruto had been dreading for those 2 weeks. Today he had to go back to the academy. Naruto walked into the classroom and immediately darted for the back corner of the room. Naruto had made sure to arrive very early, so there were only a couple of students in the classroom, and none of them ever paid any attention to Naruto. Naruto waited silently and impatiently for class to start, and grew worried as more and more students filled the classroom. Each time someone walked close to him he became a little more nervous. Naruto tried to stay optimistic about his situation, but he knew that having a missing arm was just a kind of ammunition many of his classmates were just waiting to use against him. Eventually class started, and everyone's attention was focused on Iruka-sensei. Naruto tried to discreetly take notes, as he was told to do by Shisui, but was still having trouble with its legibility. He gave up after a bit and just tried his best to focus on the lesson. Kamagakure is one of the 5 major shinobi villages, and resides in the Land of Lightning. The current Raikage is a man named A, and all 3 Raikage before him have also been named A. It was founded after the Warring States era. Unlike Konohagakure, Kamagakure is entirely run by the military. As can be inferred by where the village is located, many of the shinobi of Kamagakure have a lightning affinity. There is also a Kekkei Genkai known as the Storm Release, which quite a few Kumo shinobi possess. This is a combination of lightning release and water release. After that Naruto tuned most of what he was hearing. He looked around the classroom, only to see Sasuke Uchiha glaring at him from his spot on the other side of the classroom. Naruto looked away quickly after he caught Sasuke's eye. It was clear that he was upset that Naruto was living in the compound. It clearly didn't help that now all of Naruto's shirts had not only the Konoha military police force emblem on them, but also the famous Uchiha clan crest. There was technically no rule against a non-Uchiha wearing them, but that had been mainly because no one had ever done it before. I was just known that you don't. And now Naruto had done it. Alright, now we're going to take a break for lunch. Afterwards, I want everybody to gather by the sparring ring. We're having surprise matches today. As soon as Iruka-sensei had said that, Naruto mentally panicked. With sparring matches, everyone was bound to notice the missing arm. He knew of course that they would all eventually find out, but Naruto would have rather had it be later than sooner. Unfortunately, it seemed that it was going to be the other way around. And even more unfortunate was that Sasuke Uchiha was going to make it even sooner. Hey, Uzumaki, Sasuke said loudly as he started quickly walking towards the blonde-haired boy. Everyone turned to face them, each of them curious as to what Sasuke was going to say. This was after all, very out of character for him. What are you doing wearing that? Only Uchiha are allowed to wear the crest. You think it dope like you can just come move into the compound and start wearing the clothing like you just belong, he said angrily, before his eyes looked down to the empty right sleeve. His eyes widened, and before Naruto could do anything, he had grabbed the sleeve. And what the hell is this? How'd you lose an arm? Are you seriously that stupid? God, you're even more pathetic than I thought. You're nowhere near worthy enough to wear that crest on your back. Murmurs and whispers were heard all around the room, along with some surprised-looking faces. Taking a quick glance around the room, Naruto could tell he was in trouble. Most of the children were taking skeptic glances at him, along with what he thought were the faces of someone holding back laughter. Ino Yamanaka and Sakura Haruno look outright angry at Naruto, no doubt immediately taking their love interest's side. Shikamaru Nara looked slightly interested, which was a rare expression for him to show, but Naruto could see that there was no malice. Choji Akamichi looked very sad for Naruto, which he was immensely grateful for. Kiba Onizuka was openly laughing at him. Shino Abiram was indifferent. The one that puzzled Naruto was Hinata Hyuga. She looked like she was on the verge of an emotional breakdown. Tears were streaming down her face at an unbelievable rate. She's probably just scared. She's always been quiet, and now Sasuke's angry. It's got to be terrifying for her is what Naruto gathered. He turned his eyes back to face Sasuke just in time for him to finish his little speech. You're never going to be a shinobi. With only one arm, how do you expect to even pass the academy? One of those wooden dummies could pass easier than you. At this, many of the students started to laugh, or at least stop hiding their laughter. With the majority of the students either laughing at him, or trying to get Sasuke to put him in his place, Naruto could feel his anger growing inside him. This was the worst treatment he had ever gotten, and it was getting to him. Finally, after someone had said put the cripple out of his misery, Naruto broke. Shut up, he screamed, getting the children to quiet down a little. All of you shut up, I don't care what any of you think, I'm going to be the best shinobi any of you will ever see, I'll prove you all wrong. Besides, my brother said he's going to get me a new arm, he promised, and when I get that arm, then I'm going to be an even greater shinobi. You don't have a brother, Sasuke immediately retorted, getting another laugh from the students of the classroom. You're an orphan. You're just a nobody. You don't have any family. And you never will. Trust me, once Shisui sees how much of a failure you are, he'll dump you right back on the streets, where you belong. Sasuke, that's enough, Iruka shouted, looking very angry at what the Uchiha had said, getting the students to silence themselves. Naruto and Sasuke continued to face each other angrily, the former's eyes brimming with tears. Eventually, Sasuke turned away from Naruto and started walking back to his seat. Naruto sat back down, and the rest of the break was continued in a very tense atmosphere. Iruka had insisted that Naruto sit out of the spars, stating that Naruto should take more time to get used to being left-handed, but Naruto knew that it was to spare him the pain and embarrassment of actually having to participate. Iruka tried to look out for Naruto when he could. At the end of the day, just as all the other students were leaving, Iruka called Naruto to his desk. Naruto, I know this is a hard time for you. And I know that Sasuke was the one who initiated this particular confrontation, and I'll talk to him and his parents about it as well, but I need you to try and be civil about this. Can you do that for me? Naruto tried his best to be honest when he said yes. I promise to try, Ruka-sensei. Good. And hey, just cause you got a new older brother, don't think that means I'm not going to be around. You're welcome to come to me anytime you need something, or if you just want to get a couple hundred bowls of ramen. Iruka finished with a smile, sending Naruto off home. Naruto had always liked Iruka, and looked up to him as everything a good shinobi needed to be. It was Iruka who had gotten Naruto his beloved green goggles which still adorned his forehead, even with the cracked left lens. After he had learned that Shisui had left them when he had taken them to the hospital, he had begged for them to be brought back. Luckily for him, no one had wanted something that belonged to the demon child. He truly considered Iruka to be one of his precious people. Flashback end. True to his word, Iruka had talked to Sasuke and his parents. Ever since, Sasuke had not spoken to him a single word to him in school. Outside, however, if they happened to run into each other around the compound, Sasuke would mutter something along the lines of unworthy, and would walk away from him, even if they were heading the same place. Shisui had gotten Itachi to talk to Sasuke about his attitude several times, but his words fell on deaf ears wherever Naruto was involved. Even Sasuke's mother, Mikoto, whom he adored, couldn't get Sasuke to treat Naruto with any form of respect. However, Sasuke could no longer taunt Naruto about his lack of ability or talent, even if he were to ever speak to Naruto. Shisui had been training Naruto hard over the last 3 years, as well as getting some other shinobi they were close with to train him, quickly bring him on par with every one of his classmates and more. Naruto was by no means a prodigy like Shisui and Itachi, but with Gai-sensei mentoring him into jutsu, Kakashi helping him in tracking and survival skills, Iruka's help with shinobi knowledge, and Shisui helping him with just about everything, Naruto was no doubt one of the best in the academy. He and Sasuke had both won their fair share of spars, though Sasuke still had yet to acknowledge Naruto's skill. The one problem Naruto continued to have was ninjutsu. Shisui had said that they would wait a couple of years before they would try one-handed seals, so naturally, Naruto trained with them in secret. He knew he was getting the seals right, and he had trained extensively to make sure that his chakra control perfect, knowing that control was what his weakness was. But he continued to have problems with the chakra molding. He had mastered the basic Academy 3, and the Fireball Jutsu, as his self-assigned rite of passage, as well as making Sasuke realize that he was just as good as him, but he always had trouble learning Jutsu. Naruto finished drying himself off, and put on another set of clothes. The outfit consisted of black jogging pants that came down a bit under his knees and a sleeveless gray shirt, complete with the Uchiha fan on the back. And no outfit was complete without his trusty green goggles. When he was dressed, he walked downstairs, only to see Shisui redressed and putting back on his sandals. Shisui, where are you going? I thought we had that busy schedule of relaxing after training. You're not going to bail out on me, are you? Naruto said, giving his older brother a slight smirk as Shisui turned to him. I'm afraid I do, it's very important. But don't worry, I truly believe you're going to love me for this. He replied as Naruto walked over to him. Shisui stood up and ruffled Naruto's hair, causing the almost 10-year-old to annoyingly swat his hand away. Shisui gave a slight chuckle before heading towards the door. I'll be back before you know it, and I'll have good news with me. With that, Shisui exited the house, leaving Naruto alone in their house. As soon as Shisui had left, an enormous smile appeared on his face. He got to work immediately. With Shisui. Shisui quickly made his way through the compound, coming to a halt in front of a door. He gave it 3 knocks, and waited for a bit. After a bit the door was opened, revealing the body of 10-year-old Sasuke Uchiha. Oh, it's just you. He said, quickly turning away from the older Uchiha. I'll go get Itachi. Sasuke walked away from the door, and Shisui was left alone with only the sound of the rain accompanying him. Shisui began thinking Naruto and the progress he had made over the past 3 years. He was very proud of how much Naruto had matured. When he had first taken in Naruto, he had been a loud-mouthed, immature, short-sighted and tempered child who would not stop proclaiming his wish to be Hokage. Of course, there were more good qualities that he had, and Shisui was glad to say that those were the ones that Naruto had retained. Naruto is kind, and always put the needs of others before his own. He is dedicated, never giving up on something he set his mind to, until he had mastered it to the point where he could perform anything to its highest potential, with the smallest amount of effort. He's creative, always thinking of ways to accomplish tasks that no one else would have ever dreamed of. Naruto is optimistic and cheerful, always able to make and see the best in a situation. A minute or so after Sasuke left, Itachi walked out, closing the door behind him. So is it ready yet? I don't want to sound pushy, but it kind of needs to be done today, and you said it was going to be done 3 weeks ago. Shisui said, completely foregoing the formalities of actually greeting his friend. Itachi sighed in exasperation, giving his friend a small nod. Yes, we just finished it last night. We're keeping it at headquarters. We can go pick it up now. Together, they started running towards Anbu headquarters once again. They leapt across the rooftops, a splash being made with each step they took. So were we able to get her back here? Shisui asked. Yay, she should be arriving sometime within the end of day. She'll be here in time for the operation. But I hope that you realize that this might be even out of her league. I don't want you to get your hopes up too much. I'm sure he'll understand if it's going to work. Shisui interrupted, just as they were nearing headquarters. If it doesn't work, then I'll make it work. I gave him my word, and I never go back on that. Itachi stayed still and silent, eventually just giving his friend a solemn nod before they headed into the building. They walked through the halls of the building quickly, arriving in the lounging area. They took a quick glance around the room before they found the mask they were looking for. They silently motioned for the Anbu to come with them, to which they obliged. The three of them walked until the Anbu turned into the locker room. Placing his hand on the surface of his locker, a seal was shown as it flashed, the seal unlocking the locker and opening it. So it really is done, Tenzo, and everything is perfect. Are you sure it's going to be compatible with his body? Shisui asked rapidly, startling the two Anbu as the now named Tenzo took off his mask. Shisui, we wouldn't know for sure until Lady Tsune does her thing. Alright, we've done everything we can do, so if you could just calm down, Tenzo said, giving the Uchiha a very annoyed look. That would be a very big relief to us all. Tenzo reached into the locker and brought out a small scroll. I imagine you want to see it, he said, getting a nod from Shisui. He rolled out the scroll on the ground, and after putting in a bit of his chakra, the standard puff of smoke came out. Once the smoke cleared out, the item stored in the scroll became known. The wooden right arm. It looked like the arm had just been grown straight from a tree. The arm looked to be made from the wood of a sakura tree, having the gray color of the wood. Using his Sharingan, Shisui was able to tell that the arm had the exact dimensions of Naruto's left arm. When he picked it up, he was glad to note that although it still held the obvious texture of wood, he could run his hand up and down without getting splinters. Now, it's by no means an arm made of flesh and blood, Tenzo started, getting Shisui's attention again, but I like to think that this has many advantages. It'll be able to work and function just as good as a normal arm. It comes with full movement and a fully capable nervous system, as well as all the tenketsu that are needed in the arm. We've reinforced the wood to make the arm as stronger than steel, but still maintain the same weight as his other arm. The arm will grow with him, and if it somehow does happen to get cut or break, all he has to do is channel chakra into it, and it'll grow right back. It is also resistant to the elements, so no need to worry about it burning or staying soggy. I'd watch out for lightning nature jutsu though, it'll tear right through it. Shisui once again admired the artwork that was going to be Naruto's new arm, making sure to take it all in. When he turned over it to see all bits of it, he noticed something on the shoulder of it. Beautifully added on the shoulder of the wooden arm was the white and red Uchiha clan crest. Shisui turned to Tenzo. That was just something I added as a surprise. I used different woods to get the colors right, Tenzo said, answering Shisui's unasked question. Shisui took one last look at the arm before sealing it back into the scroll and turning to the two Anbu. Thank you guys so much for helping me with this. I know that this wasn't easy, but this really wasn't something I could do on my own. Hell, you guys did more work on this than I did. Don't worry about it, Shisui, Itachi said. It's for Naruto. You know we'd do anything for him. Shisui gave them both a nod. He gave them each a wave goodbye, failing to notice them glance at the clock in the room. Both of them looked at each other before walking up to Shisui. Hey Shisui, Itachi said, putting his hand on the older Uchiha's shoulder. Why don't we stop and get some tea? You know, to celebrate. Very special day, I mean, 3 years ever since you took in Naruto. Shisui looked at the two of them, confusion clear on his face. Yay, it is a special day. That's why I'm headed home to spend it Naruto. You know, give him the gift, he said, holding up the scroll. And I know you don't hang out with too many people, Itachi, but most people celebrate with alcohol, not tea. Well, we're not normal people now, are we, Shisui? If not tea, then a spar. Come on, I'm still in the lead by a couple. Shisui gave Itachi an annoyed sigh. Even if I wanted to, I'm not in the best condition for that right now. I had a spar with Naruto, and you wouldn't believe how sore I am. Both Itachi and Tenzo looked surprised at this. Are you serious? Tenzo asked, getting a nod from the Uchiha. Little 9-year-old Naruto can do that to you. Yay, and this is with him only using Taijutsu. If he were to stop hiding his ninjutsu training, I'd probably be in even worse condition. He's got more chakra than the Hokage, and that's all his own, not the Kyuubi's chakra. Once he can get the hang of ninjutsu, I'll have to stop holding back a bit. And it doesn't help that he's got the stamina of a god. That's amazing, Shisui. He sure is a prodigy. Tenzo replied. No, Naruto is by no means a prodigy. Everything he's accomplished had been through hard work and determination. Calling him a prodigy would be an insult to his skill. That's it, keep him talking. Just for a few more minutes, Itachi and Tenzo thought. Alright, well thank you again. But I really have to head home. Fuck. As soon as Shisui was out of sight, Itachi and Tenzo took off in a sprint. They were out of the building in a matter of seconds, and headed to the Uchiha compound. We're just going to have hope that Naruto is ready. With Naruto, Everyone get down, they should be here in a couple minutes. Tenzo and Itachi said they'd try to delay Shisui until it was time. The lights were turned off inside Shisui in Naruto's house, and hiding in the darkness, with the friends they had become closest to over the past 3 years. Hiding next to Naruto behind the columns holding up the roof was Hiruzen Sarutobi. Hiding in a group behind the couch was Iruka Yamino with Tuchi and Michiraku, sticking to the ceiling was Kakashi Haddock, and hiding in the shadows of the corner was Might Guy. It wasn't necessarily a lot of people, but they were the people that Naruto and Shisui had become very close with over the past 3 years. Naruto considered each of them to be great teachers to him, as well as his best and only friends. A moment later, the window opened, and Itachi and Tenzo walked in and quickly hid in the shadows. Shisui's almost here, we made it just before he did. Stay quiet. A couple more seconds passed in silence, until the sound of someone landing outside was heard. Soon enough the door was opened. Naruto, where are you? I've got a surprise for you. I'm over here, Shisui, Naruto yelled back, quickly getting Shisui to walk towards the living room. And as soon as he stepped foot into the room, surprise, everyone shouted as the light switched on, revealing a room filled with balloons and streamers, colorful confetti raining down from the ceiling Kakashi was now standing upside down on. On the wall behind everyone was a large yellow banner with the words Happy Adoption Day written in large black letters. On the table in the center of the room was a very large and overly frosted cake. What the hell is this? What's going on? Shisui asked in confusion, having been very startled by the surprise. Everyone could see that his hand had just about gone for his kunai pouch. What do you think this is, Shisui? It's a surprise party, Naruto said, grabbing Shisui's hand and leading him into the room. We're celebrating 3 of us being a family, and that obviously calls for a surprise party. Yes, but Naruto, you do realize that it's your adoption day, not mine. If anything, I should be throwing you a surprise party, Shisui said, causing the atmosphere around them to be a little more calm. Well, I don't think so, Naruto said awkwardly. Cause you know, this may be the day that I was officially adopted. To me, it's the day you became my brother. So, it's kind of a joint special day for us. Shisui smiled at that, feeling touched that Naruto felt that way. Once the atmosphere had returned to its happy state, the party resumed in full. Hours went by as the group of people talked and laughed, many marveling at how far Naruto's training had come when he demonstrated his ability to walk on the walls perfectly. Both Naruto and Shisui had to reprimand Kakashi for giving them a collection of all the Icha books as a gift. And Naruto was glad to note that Aim looked very happy talking to Shisui, occasionally touching his arm, and kept making eyes at his lips. Sadly, Shisui seemed oblivious to all of this. The party eventually came to an end as the guests made their way home. The living room was left a mess, with plastic plates and cups in various spots, as well as a large amount of uneaten cake on the table. Shisui finally saw Hiruzen out the door, giving him a wave as he closed the door on the last guest. Once they were both finally sure that they were in fact alone, they immediately fell down to the floor, both completely exhausted after today's spark combined the mental exhaustion of having a party. So that was fun. Best adoption day ever, right, Shisui? Naruto said with a small laugh, causing Shisui to turn over to him. He sat back up and took out the scroll from his pouch, laying it right on the floor next to Naruto. It's about to get even better, Shisui said, bringing a look of confusion onto the younger's face. He pushed himself up with his lone arm and faced his older brother. What is it? It's your birthday present. I had to get it a little early this year, but it'll be worth it. Naruto looked skeptically at Shisui before grabbing the scroll. He rolled it out on the floor carefully, making sure to clear the surrounding area of any garbage. Once it was laid on the floor, he placed his left hand on the seal shown on the paper, and swatted the following puff of smoke. When he saw what had been released from its seal prison, his eyes widened immensely, and his mouth opened slightly, as if to say something, but then stopping himself. All was silent for almost a full minute, before Naruto suddenly launched himself towards the older Uchiha. I love it, I love it, I love it, he said over and over again, his eyes dripping with tears. His hands gripped Shisui's shirt very tightly. Eventually Shisui had to pry off Naruto in order to explain everything about the arm. Okay Naruto, this new arm is essentially a wooden upgrade. It's got full movement, feeling, and chakra use. It can regenerate if ever damaged. It's resistant to all the elements, but watch out for lightning. And it's super durable, supposed to be stronger than steel. And it'll be able to grow with you. Now I'm giving you the week off from the academy. Tomorrow is going to be the surgery. We tracked down Lady Tsunade herself to do this. And for the next 5 days you'll be in rehabilitation. That should mean that you get out on your birthday, and you'll be able to enjoy the entire day with your new arm. By this point, Naruto was unable to speak. The only thing coming out of his mouth were small sobs and hiccups. Shisui grabbed Naruto's leftover cup of water from the table and gave it to him, motioning for him to drink it. Naruto slowly sipped on the water, calming himself down before he set the cup back down again. Thank you, Shisui. This really is the best gift ever. Not much else was said between the brothers for the rest of the evening. Shisui sealed the arm again, rolling it up and handing it to Naruto. He sent Naruto off to bed, to which Naruto complied very quickly. He climbed into his bed, still holding the scroll in his hand, and lay down on the soft mattress. He brought up the blankets and placed the scroll under his pillow. He laid with a smile on his have as the still falling rain lulled him to sleep. The next day. Where the hell is Tsunade? She was supposed to be here half-hour ago. Shisui asked, and he paced the length of the hospital room he and Naruto were in. He gave a frustrated sigh as he kept his eyes on the door. Naruto gave his own sigh, but this one was directed at the one pacing the room. Calm down, Shisui, she'll be here. You need to calm down. Naruto told him, getting no reaction from the older boy. The door opened soon after, and Shisui immediately turned towards it. Shisui turned away in annoyance when in walked Itachi, Tenzo, Kakashi, Guy, Iruka, Tsuchi, Aim, and Hiruzen. Now why do you look so down, Shisui? Is it really that bad to see us? Hiruzen said jokingly, getting a chuckle from the group. Shisui's just upset that Lady Tsunade is running late. Naruto said, a look of realization coming onto everyone's face. Well, I think he's just concerned about his little brother. He just wants the best for you, isn't that right, Shisui? Aim put in with a red tint to her cheeks that everyone noticed but Shisui. Naruto slyly raised an eyebrow at her, to which she quickly looked away from to blonde. Well, we walked past her assistant in the hallway, so she'll probably be here any moment, Kakashi said. In the meantime, I have a question about this arm. How exactly does it work? We can't just stitch it in and expect it to work, can we? He asked. Well, Kakashi, that kind of is what we're hoping for. Tenzo replied, getting a very confused look from everyone except Itachi and Shisui. The arm was created mostly using the Mokuton, which I obtained with Hashirama Senju's Na. So with that, combined with Naruto's dormant Senju Na, and his natural Uzumaki healing abilities, hopefully it will just naturally fuse with his body. All the shinobi in the room noticed that he conveniently left out the Kyuubi. They all knew that although the Kyuubi could be very helpful with the operation, it could also be the sole reason it failed. The door suddenly opened, revealing the entering figure of the great Lady Tsunade. Walking just behind her was her ever-loyal assistant Shizune, who looked rather shy when she saw how many people were in the room. The blonde, however, gave them all an annoyed glance. Alright, unless you're getting a new arm, I need you out of here. You can wait here or you can go home, I don't care, just get the hell out, she said, causing the inhabitants of the room to all look around confused or irritated, and walk out. When they were done, only Shisui remained in the room with Naruto. Wow, this is so cool, Naruto said excitedly. The greatest medic nin in the world is treating me. Can I ask you some questions? I've been intrigued by medic ninjutsu for a while, but there aren't many people to talk to about it. No, we're getting this over and done with. I want to leave this damn village as soon as possible, she responded quickly. Naruto quickly took the hint and stayed silent. After a couple of minutes preparing herself with Shizune, Tsunade turned to Shisui and Naruto. Alright, now here's what's going to happen. I'm going to have to remove what little you have left of your right arm, and then we're going to have to fuse the arm to your body. Now as a doctor I have to remind you that there is the very real possibility that this may not work, so this is the time to back out. If you don't now, we can't reverse any damage that may be done in the operation. We're not backing out, Naruto replied. This will work. And when it does, I'll be an even greater shinobi. Yay, whatever you say, kid. Alright, Uchiha, you need to leave the room. Shizune will come inform you and your friends when this is done, but be prepared to wait for a couple hours. Alright, Tsunade said, to which Shisui nodded. Shisui turned over to Naruto. Alright, we'll be waiting outside, Naruto. And remember, don't worry if this doesn't work. We'll find another way. I gave you my word, and there's no way in hell I'm going to go back on it when we've come this far. Don't worry, Shisui. It'll work. I have faith in my big brother, Naruto said, causing a smile to appear on both of their faces. Shisui then exited the room, leaving Naruto alone with Tsunade and Shizune. Alright Naruto, let's get started, she said, causing the young boy to turn and face her. You bet. I'm ready for this. Naruto suddenly noticed that Shizune looked very nervous, and kept glancing at the older blonde woman. Alright Naruto, now you should know ahead of time that as much as I'd love to give you some sleeping agents and painkillers, your Uzumaki and Senju healing abilities negate any effect those have. Now there's nothing I can do about the painkillers, there's something I can do about the sleeping agent. Naruto looked skeptically at the medic nin, and carefully asked, and what might that be? The last thing Naruto saw before the darkness was her fist. Naruto stared at the waterfall in front of him, a look of horror written on his face. His face and body had various cuts and bruises, two particularly prominent cuts going diagonally side by side down a respectable length of his chest. Blood was spattered all over him, staining his clothes, as well as his mind. His body shook as his left eye felt blinding pain. Even so, he continued to stare in front of him. Off to his side was Itachi, his hands were also painted over with the red color of death. His eyes were a similar color, with each eye also containing 3 black tomo. The tomo were spinning slowly as he finished what he was doing, and stepped away from the young blonde. As he stepped away, his eyes changed from their normal 3 tomo to a new 3-bladed pinwheel. And as Naruto looked up, his wooden hand closing into a very tight fist, his lavender eye dripping with tears. And his red one dripped with blood. 3 days ago. Move it up, Naruto. The doctor said, to which Naruto complied. He lifted his right arm up from his side. Once his hand was above his head, the doctor motioned for him to lower it back down. Once it was down, the doctor walked to the other side of the room, picking up a rubber ball along the way. Catch it, he said simply, still looking down at his clipboard while he threw the ball towards the young blonde. A moment later and Naruto held up the ball in his right arm, a very proud look on his face. He threw the ball back to the doctor who quickly caught it and set it back in its place, before writing something else down on his ever so important clipboard. Alright, last test. You ready for this? The doctor asked. Naruto's face immediately changed to one of determination as he put his hands together, the contrast from flesh and wood impossible to miss. I'm more ready than ever, he said. Without the doctor's instruction, Naruto began channeling his chakra into both of his hands. After a couple of moments, Naruto disappeared in a puff of smoke, being replaced with a chair. On the other side of the room, where the chair had come from, Naruto reappeared, though landing on his head rather than his feet. Alright, you're still having trouble controlling your chakra and jutsu with the new arm, but that should go away with practice. Other than that, everything is great. Your coordination with your arm is great, very impressive for such a short amount of time. And your ability to perform all of the tasks you already do, even training, is quite excellent. You should be released within the next hour. Thank you, Dr. Haruno. I'm only this good now because of you. Naruto responded, giving the pink-haired man in front of him a respectful bow. The man nodded his head to the child, and then left the room. As he was leaving, Shisui walked in, carrying a grocery bag in his left hand. You are ready to go, or are you still being released? He asked Naruto as he handed his brother the grocery bag. Out of the bag Naruto pulled out a pair of his black sandals and pants and green goggles. He noticed that his gray Chiha-crested shirt was short-sleeved and smiled. The Hokage had recommended that Naruto wrapped his arm in medical tape, or at least wear long sleeves, in order for it to be not as distracting, but he knew that Shisui wanted everyone to know what they had accomplished. He said that it should be within the hour, so I should still be able to make it to school. I still don't see why I have to go. It is my birthday after all. Hey, don't try to get out school with the birthday card. This was your gift, remember? Shisui said as he pointed to the arm. Whether you like it or not, the academy is important, so you can just steal, okay? Shisui told Naruto, quickly putting on his authoritative mask. I know, I was just thinking that we could hang out. Talk about stuff. Maybe get a spar or two in. Naruto replied back as he slipped out of his hospital robes and started putting on his day clothes. Well, that sounds great, Naruto, but even if I were to let you skip school, I've already made plans with Itachi. He's having a bit of difficulty with something, so I've got to give him some advice. I should be done in time to pick you up from the academy. Then afterwards maybe you, me, Itachi, and Iruka can all go out for some ramen, alright? Naruto gave him an excited nod in response, and just a moment later Dr. Haruno walked back into the room. Alright, you two, you're all set to leave. Naruto, make sure you keep up with your coordination and chakra practices. And Shisui, you make sure Naruto doesn't overdo it. If you two do that, Naruto will be up to 200% in no time. Thank you, Dr. Haruno, your services are very appreciated. Shisui responded. Dr. Haruno left the room, and Shisui and Naruto started to leave. It really is a mystery how such a nice man like Dr. Haruno has such a bitch daughter. Naruto received a slap on the back of his head for that statement. Was Shisui. Shisui had just dropped Naruto off at the academy and was running towards the waterfall. Under normal circumstances, Shisui might have considered letting Naruto take the day off. But this was a meeting that Itachi had called for with the utmost urgency. He had come by late last night to discuss it, but then deemed it too unsafe to discuss such sensitive information there. Shisui landed at the meeting spot, a good meter away from Itachi. Itachi looked like he hadn't slept in days, which knowing Itachi, was a very real possibility. He had dark bags under his eyes, and his eyes kept darting around. He was no doubt very much on guard. What's happened? He asked simply, intending to get to the point very quickly. They're making their move soon. They've deemed themselves capable of taking on the village. How are they doing that? They postponed it because of a lack of capable shinobi and resources. How could they possibly get everything together in only 3 years? Itachi looked at his friend, and Shisui immediately knew that the answer wasn't pleasant. Danzo is helping them. He's given them money from the village, and provided them with a couple of rudanbu. Resources and shinobi aren't an issue anymore. Shisui's eyes widened at the new information. Why is he helping them? He was the one who suggested a massacre when they were planning this years ago. I haven't the slightest clue. At first I thought that this was his way of trying to get the massacre to happen. By helping get them to plan, he could easily get us to slaughter them. But I've had Tenzo look into it, and he says that the route assigned to help are legit. There's literally no reason for this. Shisui took a couple deep breaths, taking a couple moments to process the information. He knew that the Uchiha would try to plant a coup again at some point, but he wasn't counting on sponsorship from Danzo. Well, we need to speak with the Hokage as soon as possible, preferably with the elders and Danzo there. We need to figure out exactly what they plan to do. There's no need. I already know. Itachi replied, his face taking on a very clear look of sadness. He stepped up closer to his friend and placed a hand on his shoulder. The Uchiha are going to release and control the Kyuubi. They're going to use Naruto. With Naruto. Alright Naruto, you can do this. You're an Uchiha. And the Uchiha never backed down. Naruto took several deep breaths, preparing himself to walk into the academy. And while Naruto knew that he was not an Uchiha by blood, or even officially recognized as one, Naruto considered himself to live up to the name, at least enough so for him to start introducing himself as Naruto Uchiha. Ever since being taken into Shisui's care 3 years ago, Naruto's only true goal was to bring honor to the crest he wore on his back and arm, and to one day be recognized as an accomplished member of the clan. Naruto was now wearing his black shinobi sandals, black pants, and short-sleeved gray shirt. As usual, on the back of his shirt was the Uchiha Military Police Force crest. His green goggles took their designated spot on his forehead, with the left lens still cracked from that day. Naruto took one last calming breath before walking into the academy. As he walked towards his classroom, he passed a couple of the teachers, all of whom had to do a double take when they saw Naruto with his new arm. Naruto quickly reached his classroom, and once again had to take a moment to prepare himself before entering. He slowly reached out, opened the door, and walked through. His lavender eyes met the stares of all the kids in the classroom, who at first were wondering why Naruto was late again, but were now entirely focused on his new limb. Naruto froze up at all the stares he was receiving. Keep in mind that Naruto was a very confident child, which spoke volumes of how nervous he was about everyone's reactions. Are they going to try and use this to make fun of me as well, he kept thinking. Glad that you've come back, Naruto. The voice of Iruka said, interrupting everyone's thoughts. Why don't you take the empty seat at the back of the room when class is over? I'll give you the work that we've done this past week. Thank you, Iruka-sensei. Naruto replied, quickly making his way up to the seat. Naruto didn't want people looking at him any longer than necessary. He sat in his seat, and the lesson continued from where Iruka-sensei had left off. He was talking about Kekkei Genkai, something that Naruto, and all of the clan children, had learned about years ago. Every now and then, Naruto caught someone looking over at him, and they always looked over in a different direction. Naruto frequently caught the eye of Hinata Hyuga, who in turn would become bright red, look away very quickly, and feel for something in her big bulky coat. Naruto was confused by this every time. Eventually, the dreaded lunch break came. And as Naruto expected, the majority of his classmates rushed towards him, in order to find out what they could about his new arm. How'd you get it, Naruto? Can I touch it? And can it do anything cool? Were some of the more common questions that Naruto got asked by everyone. Calm down everybody, Iruka said loudly, quickly gathering the attention of the students. I'm sure we all want to hear about Naruto's new arm. But you can't answer them if everybody is talking at once. If Naruto is willing to answer questions, then do so in a calm manner. Naruto smiled at his sensei, who gave his own smile and nod to the blonde. This was Iruka's way of giving him an out. Thank you, Iruka-sensei, but I'd prefer to not have to answer too many questions. Maybe at another time though. Alright then. Everybody, no more questions. Iruka said, getting a large groan from most of the class. I think it sounds like you want extra homework, correct? Everyone calmed down after that. After class, Naruto walked out of the academy with the rest of the children, and immediately found Shisui waiting for him. Standing next to Shisui was Itachi, who looked even more tired in Naruto's opinion. Naruto was about to wave to them and run over when he felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned around and found that it was Hinata, who was looking even more nervous than usual. Her light lavender eyes refused to meet his own, brighter lavender eyes. In her hands was a package wrapped in orange wrapping paper, with tiny Uchiha crests on it. Hey Hinata. What's up, Naruto asked, confused as to why Hinata would be talking to him. Whenever she even so much as looked at him, she turned red and would look away. And he was pretty sure she had a condition at one point. About a year ago, Hinata tripped during one of the class's physical tests. But when Naruto took her hand to help her up, she fainted. I just wanted to say congratulations on your new arm. And to wish you a happy birthday. Oh, thanks Hinata. I didn't think anyone remembered my birthday. Naruto replied. And then, for reasons Naruto could never explain, Hinata turned bright red. Here Hinata stuttered and yelled. She violently handed him the package she was holding, before she ran off faster than Naruto had ever seen anyone in the academy run. He could have swore that he saw a path of dust trailing behind her. Naruto stared at where she was for a couple seconds in confusion, before he gave a slight shrug, and turned back to walk towards Shisui and Itachi, while also noticing that Sasuke had joined them. While he was walking back, he looked over the package that Hinata had given him. It was small, about the size of his palm, and when lightly shaken he could hear something moving against it. What you got there? Naruto Shisui asked when he had reached the group of Uchiha. All their eyes quickly looked down at the package that Hinata had forced upon him, and quickly analyzed it. Shisui quickly donned an expression of mischief. "Is it a gift?" Naruto Shisui asked in a suddenly happy voice that made Naruto nervous instantly. "I think so, Hinata gave it to me. Why?" "I think someone might have a crush on our little Naruto," Shisui replied in a very high sing-song voice. Naruto's face immediately turned red with embarrassment, and he turned his body towards Shisui. "Shisui, what the hell are you talking about? That's ridiculous," Naruto shouted. "You're right," Sasuke said, shocking Naruto into remembering that Sasuke was there. "There's no way that a girl from an esteemed clan like the Hyugas would go so low as to be attracted to the loser orphan," Sasuke Itachi said loudly, a rare display of anger towards his younger brother. Sasuke flinched at the voice and turned his head towards his older brother, his face showing slight worry and fear. Itachi's eyes met Sasuke's, and instantly Sasuke looked back towards the ground. "I'm sorry, that was uncalled for," Sasuke said, clearly not meaning it, but too afraid of what Itachi might say if he didn't. Naruto nodded back at Sasuke, his face gone from the earlier embarrassment, now a serious and firm expression. "Yes, it was. But thank you for apologizing," Naruto said, his voice as firm as his face. Shisui was proud of the way Naruto handled issues. When he first took him in, a simple insult on his height would have sent Naruto into a frenzy, with him demanding to fight the one who had called him out. "Now that I think about it," Shisui thought, taking a good look at Naruto, "he looks taller than usual. Taller than most of his classmates. Well, we should be getting back home. But I'll see you at Ichiraku's later. Farewell." With that, Itachi and Sasuke left the academy and started on their way to the Uchiha compound. Shisui had to make a quick stop by the Hokage's office, which in Shisui language meant that Naruto would be stuck waiting outside of the office for about an hour. So the two of them quickly made their way into town and towards the Hokage's building. "Alright Naruto, I'll try to be quick. Just wait out here, and afterwards we'll head over to Ichiraku's," Shisui said before giving Naruto's hair a scruff and walking into the Hokage's office. "Just make yourself comfortable on one of the waiting chairs, Naruto, it'll most likely take a while." The Hokage's secretary pointed towards the seats lined up on the wall, which Naruto walked over to and sat on. He sat the present that Hinata had given him down onto the seat next to him, and started the long process of trying to keep himself from going insane with boredom. "What's that?" a new voice said next to Naruto, causing the young blonde to scream in fright and fall off his chair. Standing back up, he took a look to his left to see this mysterious person. It was a girl who looked around his age, maybe just a tad younger. She had dark skin that looked like the smoothest thing Naruto had ever seen. She had white hair that was cut short, and dark green eyes that Naruto was mesmerized by. She was dressed in a simple long-sleeved gray shirt with black pants. She wore the same sandals that Naruto wore. What's what?" Naruto asked back when he realized that he might have been staring a bit too long. Her eyes looked confused at his question. "A thing you sat down on the chair." "What is it?" she asked, clarifying her earlier question. Once Naruto realized that she wasn't talking about his new arm, he relaxed. "I don't know, a girl in my class gave it to me after school," Naruto asked. He looked at her once again, and realized that he had never seen this girl, not even in passing through the town. And she clearly wasn't from Konoha, otherwise she not only would have known who he was, but would have most likely tried to belittle and be mean to him. "Oh, well, I hope you enjoyed your gift. Is it perhaps your birthday today?" the girl asked, further shocking Naruto with the stranger's kindness. "Yes, it is. I just turned 10 years old. I am 9 years old myself. I wish you a most enjoyable birthday. Pardon my earlier rudeness, my name is MABUI Sekiyama. May I ask what your name is?" By this point Naruto was beaming and smiling at the unusual kindness this girl was giving him. No kid his own age ever willingly gave out their name to him, at least not when they found out exactly who he was. Yet Mabui had just given it out to him, just like everyone else gave theirs out to other people. "My name is Naruto Uchiha. It's a pleasure to meet you, MABUI Sekiyama." "It is a pleasure to meet you as well, Naruto Uchiha. I hope you don't mind my asking, but you look very different from what the Uchiha usually look like. Is there a particular reason for this?" "I was adopted about 3 years ago. My older brother is an Uchiha, and the best one there is. If I may ask you as well, Mabui, you don't look like you're from Konoha." Mabui looked just the tiniest bit uncomfortable at that statement, but looked down at the floor to try and hide her expression. "No, I'm from Kumo. I'm just accompanying my father here for some meetings. I'm not allowed to know what it is. But apparently it's pretty important." "You're from Kumo?" Naruto exclaimed, abandoning their unusually formal way of talking, while simultaneously causing Mabui to bring her head back up in surprise. "That's so cool. I've always wanted to visit Kumo, or the mountains as beautiful as everyone says they are, and the Raikage is so awesome. Isn't he the fastest shinobi alive? I mean, I totally bet that my brother is faster and could beat him, but that's still so cool." Mabui looked at Naruto for a couple seconds with a confused expression, and just as Naruto was starting to think that his personality lost him another chance at friendship, the girl started giggling, and her expression calmed down considerably. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend you. I just thought that." Don't worry about it, Naruto. I appreciate your enthusiasm for my country. Mabui interrupted, a smile wide on her face. Not too many of the Konoha people have been too happy about us being here, so it's nice to know that there's at least one person here who's okay with us. Naruto smiled at that, and was relieved that he still had a chance to make his first friend. Oh yay, Kumo sounds amazing. Shisui met a shinobi from Kumo on a mission about 2 years ago, and ever since then he's always told me how much he wants to take me someday. He seemed to talk about your brother quite a lot, Naruto. You must admire him quite a bit. Mabui replied with a look of adoration on her face. Oh yay, Shisui is the best. He's probably the greatest shinobi in Konoha, and one day, I'm gonna be just like him, Naruto said. Deciding to take another risk, he raised his right arm to show Mabui. Look, he even got me this arm last week for my birthday, to replace the one I lost. Mabui's eyes looked up and down the arm, widening with wonder. Wow, that's so cool, it's made of wood. I've never heard of something like that. Can it do everything a normal arm can? That, and more. It comes with all sorts of cool upgrades. I can't quite get the hang of focusing chakra through it yet, but it'll be so sweet when I can. Just then, out of the Hokage's office came a man who wore the traditional one-strapped Kumo vest, with dark skin and white hair. He looked to Mabui's father, and had a somewhat effeminate look to him. As if he were to grow his hair, he could be passed up as a girl. He walked over to the two children, and as the door was closing, Naruto could see Shisui stand in front of Hiruzen's desk, and what was unsettling to Naruto was that Shisui looked very worried. Mabui, we are done for the day. Are you ready to head back to the hotel before dinner? The man asked, reaching his hand down to Mabui's head to pet it. Mabui swatted the hand away quickly, looking very embarrassed that he had done that. Sure thing, Dad. But this is my friend Naruto Uchiha. Naruto, this is my father, Akio Sekiyama. It is a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Sekiyama, Naruto said as he shook the man's hand, trying his absolute hardest not to smile as widely and happily as he was. This was the first time another person around his age had ever called him a friend. The pleasure is mine, Mr. Uchiha. I was just in there with your older brother Shisui. Fine young man he is. And he spoke very highly of you when the Hokage mentioned you. It is wonderful that some citizens here are as good as the two of you, and even better that you should befriend Mabui, Akio said, a small smile of his effeminate face as he let go of the blonde's hand. Well, Mabui and I should be going. We will be in the village for a few more days, so we hope to see you around, Naruto, he said as he and Mabui looked about to leave. If I may ask, sir, but do the two of you know what you might do for dinner? If not, then Shisui, myself, and a couple other fine shinobi are going to be having dinner at Ichiraku's ramen in the market district. If you two would like, you are more than welcome to come. Naruto was hoping that the two of them would say yes, if only for a chance to hang out with his first friend some more. And if it were possible, then the two of them could arrange another time to meet up once more, before she had to go back to Kumo. Akio Sekiyama looked in thought for a moment, before turning his head down to look at his daughter. Mabui, would you like to go to this Ichiraku's restaurant? Yes please, Mabui said louder than she usually talked. It would be great to see Naruto and his friends. And ramen is so good. Naruto's respect for Mabui was increased the second he found out she loved ramen. Very well, we shall join you, Naruto, Akio said, turning over to Naruto, smiling at how happy his daughter had gotten. What time should be expected to arrive? We all plan on being there around 6:30. I look forward to seeing you two there, Mr. Sekiyama. We look forward to seeing you there as well, Naruto. Goodbye, Akio replied formally, taking his daughter, as the two of them started making their way down the stairs and out of the building. See you later, Naruto, Mabui yelled as she started down the stairs, prompting a sea from the blonde-haired 10-year-old. Naruto calmed down quite a bit once the Sekiyamas were out of sight. Naruto never liked having to talk so formally, and that was probably the longest discussion with someone his own age that hadn't ended with him being the target of hateful comments. So it had taken quite a lot of energy from him. But he was still smiling, so widely you might have thought he had gotten a coupon for free ramen from Tucci. But now came the long wait he had until Shisui was done speaking with Hiruzen, leaving him alone with his gift and silence. 2 hours later, Shisui finally walked out of the Hokage's office, with not only Hiruzen at his side, but apparently Itachi had snuck in there at some point. All three looked exhausted from the discussion, but there was one person who would not stand for such injustice. Naruto yelled at the three of them, causing all three of them to jump in shock. It's been over 2 hours. Do you know how boring it can get with 2 hours, and absolutely nothing to do? I felt like I was going crazy. What on earth could possibly justify a 2-hour meeting? The three shinobi looked caught off guard at the question, and luckily it was Shisui who was able to think of something the quickest. Well, Naruto, Lord Hokage needed Itachi and I to help him with team placements for the new batch of Genins. You know how old he's getting, he's having trouble doing it alone. Hey, I may be getting old, but I am the Hokage, Hiruzen said to Shisui, looking quite offended at being the scapegoat for Shisui's lie. Itachi however had a small smile on his face, which was good considering what they had just spent the last 2 hours discussing. Well, that's not a good excuse, but I guess I'll allow it. Anyways, we've got to get going, guys. We've got to be at Ichiraku soon, Naruto said while turning around, clearly in an attempt to take charge of the situation by leading them out. Well, I will see you all later. As much as I wish I could accompany the three of you, I've got some important meetings to attend to, he said, directing the statement at Itachi and Shisui, who both gave a sad nod. By this time tomorrow, Hiruzen would have a final decision on how to deal with the Uchiha threat. Although right now it looked like they already knew what had to be done. By this time tomorrow, Shisui would be given the mission to use Kodamatsukami on the Uchiha clan. The village was shrouded in the veil of night as a lone cloaked figure ran across the rooftops of Konohagakure. The black cloak flowing behind them, and their head topped with messy, somewhat wavy blonde locks, flowing in the wind made by their running. A large part of their face was covered by a black face mask, but one red eye and one lilac eye could be seen underneath the mess of blonde hair. As they were running, there were several other shinobi attempting to catch up towards the blonde shinobi. They were all clothed in the Uchiha police force uniform, with lighter colored shinobi clothing, and the police force emblem on their shoulders. They continuously threw shuriken and kunai at the cloak's shadow, which they always avoided. Another member of the police force appeared ahead of the running figure, only to receive a jumping kick to the face. Signal the gate guards, Danzo needs him in the village. We can't let the demon who killed Shisui get away, one of the Uchiha yelled. After the command was given, another of them pulled out a purple flare and shot it towards the sky, a village signal to secure the village gates, and keep the perimeter secure. The two guards saw the signal and closed the gates, and many Chunin rushed to the walls, prepared to defend it. As the blonde shinobi got closer to the gates of the village, the red eye began spiraling, and the tom was seen on a changing shape, until it formed three curves, all connected around a red pupil. Right as they were at the entrance, the voice whispered quietly, "Amaterasu." With that, a strange, almost mystical black fire engulfed the gates of the village, spreading throughout the entire wall. When a hole was formed by the crumbling village wall, the blonde shinobi ran through, leaving the Konoha shinobi to deal with the inextinguishable flames. Meanwhile, watching the entire thing in a secret office underneath the ground with a crystal ball, was the leader of Root. He had messy black hair, a heavily bandaged right face, and a scar on his chin in the form of an X. He made a signal with his left arm, and immediately one of his Anbu was kneeling at his side. "Contact Orochimaru immediately. Tell him to look into the Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. And let Naruto Uchiha escape. He will be crucial in the tests to gaining multiple Sharingan powers, later in his life though." As the Anbu leapt away to complete the orders that were given to him by his master, Danzo looked at Naruto as he ran through the forest unfollowed, and thought to himself, "How did you do it, Naruto? How were you able to gain the Amaterasu? Did Shisui lie about having only the Kodamatsukami? Is this unique to you alone?" 1 week earlier, 14 hours until Shisui's death. Naruto screamed as his face hit the floor, his body following soon after. He heard someone shuffling a bit beside him, their feet dragging against his bedroom floor. "Get up, you lazy kid. You're going to be late for the academy. I swear, your laziness is going to kill me one day," Shisui said as he started making Naruto's bed. Even though Shisui was using what he liked to call his adult voice, he still had a small smile on his face, as he was tucking Naruto's blanket into the bed. "You know, there will come a day where you won't be able to push me out of bed anymore. I'll be so strong that I'll be the one pushing you out of bed," Naruto said, mock glaring at his older brother, while the latter gave his younger brother a smirk. "First, let's focus on your chakra molding problem, then we'll see about becoming stronger than me," Shisui replied, bringing his hand down to Naruto in an offer to help him up. Naruto gave him a confident smile, taking Shisui's hand with his own wooden one, and pulling himself up. "Don't you worry, Shisui, that day is coming sooner than you think," Naruto said, shortly before he got the back of his head slapped by Shisui's hand. "It'll get here even faster. Once you get ready and go to the academy, you're just stalling now." So after another short round of arguing, Naruto reluctantly pulled himself out of his pajamas, and into a pair of black pants and a long-sleeved dark gray Uchiha crested shirt. He grabbed his signature green goggles and placed them on his forehead. And lastly, Naruto put on his shuriken and kunai pouches on his hip and right leg. Those were part of his gifts from Kakashi. Kakashi had gotten him some more training gear, including weight training seals that could increase in weight, scrolls on a couple crank jutsu, and some more proper shinobi tools and pouches. Itachi had gotten him his own tanto, much like the one Shisui had, which Naruto kept proudly displayed on his nightstand. Bai had given him a set of his Goken Taijutsu training scrolls, stating that although the Uchiha Interceptor First was a very youthful Taijutsu form, that Naruto might want a backup. Iruka had gifted Naruto a small calligraphy set, knowing that Naruto was struggling to learn the art. Tenzo had given him a copy of Tales of the Utterly Gutsy Ninja, which Naruto had completely devoured in a single night. And Hiruzen had given Naruto the current bane of his existence, the scroll for the Rasengan. The most peculiar gift he had gotten though, was the one he had received from Hinata, a long red scarf, so long as to nearly touch the ground when he wore it. It was beautifully made, and was perhaps the softest piece of clothing that Naruto had ever touched. If it were winter, he would be wearing it, but it didn't get cold enough to justify a scarf until mid-November in Fire Country. Naruto still appreciated the gesture. His birthday dinner at Ichiraku's had been one of the best days he had ever had. The Ichiraku's gift was of course, a free birthday meal for the whole party, which Naruto had quickly taken advantage of. The whole gang was there, laughing along with each other and telling stories. But what Naruto particularly enjoyed was the presence of his new friend, Mabui. They had had a blast getting to know the other, finding out some great things about each other. They both had the same favorite food, both excelled at Taijutsu and Shuriken Jutsu, and loved reading. Although Mabui preferred a good non-fiction book, which Naruto called useless, unless it had to do with shinobi training. They both wanted to go into the shinobi area of work, but where Naruto wanted to be a field shinobi, Mabui liked the idea of being an analyst. Even with the few differences they had, Naruto and Mabui had been getting along great. They had been hanging out together after Naruto finished at the academy ever since that day. Although a bit sad was the fact that Mabui and her father would be returning to Kumo tomorrow. As Naruto made his way to the academy, he couldn't help but think what his life would be like when the two of them left. It had been extremely nice to have a friend for once, or at least on around his own age. When Mabui was gone, he would be left with no other kid to talk to and have fun with. Although he supposed he might run into her if he were to ever go on a mission around the Kumo area, although he wouldn't say it was a definite possibility. Naruto walked into the classroom and took his usual seat at the back corner of the room by the window. Some of the other students were already in class, but the majority started flowing in soon after Naruto had entered. Shino Aburum sat in the seat to the right of Naruto, for which Naruto was grateful. He and Shino had never really spoken to each other much, but Naruto appreciated Shino's respectful quietness and dedication to learning whatever was being taught. 2 seats from Naruto, and to the seat to the right of Shino, sat Hinata. She sat down with a red face and her 2 index fingers poking each other in her signature act of anxiety. Neither Hinata nor Naruto would be able to notice it, with Shino's sunglasses in the way, but Shino took a quick glance at the quiet girl. He studied the girl for a moment, before giving a quiet sigh, giving his unspoken sympathy for the love-struck girl. A low rumbling was heard coming from outside. As the seconds passed, the rumbling proceeded to get louder and louder. Naruto could feel an ever so slight shaking in his chair as the sound continued to grow. Naruto looked out the window to his left, and saw a cloud of dust in the distance, heading in their direction. As the distance between the dust cloud and the academy shortened, he could make out 2 figures at the front of it, looking as if they were ramming into each other side by side rather violently. "Get away from me, Inabig," Sasuke's mind the Pinkette shouted, so much so that you could hear it from where Naruto was. Ino rammed into Sakura's side again, her elbow digging into the other girl's side. "Why don't you back off? Billboard brow Sasuke is obviously in love with me. Now why would he even think about going out with you?" Ino screamed back, her arms swinging widely back and forth, in an attempt to increase her stride and get ahead of her rival. Naruto looked over to the right side of the classroom to see Sasuke sitting by himself, his eye twitching as the voices came closer and closer to the academy building. Naruto could see Sasuke preparing himself for the 2 academy girls' inevitable advances. Naruto didn't usually care much for the raven-haired student, but he did feel sorry for him wherever the 2 worst fangirls were concerned. Soon enough the 2 girls made it to the academy, and in a couple seconds had made it to the classroom door, each struggling to push the other out of the way of the door, while simultaneously shouting first at each other. "That's enough," Iruka shouted at the 2 girls, instantly getting everyone's attention and causing the argument between the 2 girls to cease. "Class is going to begin in a couple minutes. So why don't you 2 just calm down and pick a seat? And both of you sit away from Sasuke," he said, saying that last sentence before the 2 girls could try and get to the seat next to Sasuke before the other. Begrudgingly moved to opposite sides of the room and sat down, both returning the other's glare. Naruto saw Sasuke visibly relax, his shoulders coming down from their very still state, and his head drop a little as he let out his breath. Naruto would probably never get along with Sasuke, but he could at least understand him. 11 hours until Shisui's death. "Alright, we're going to have break, and then we'll be participating in some spars. Participation is mandatory, and no forfeiting." "Got it," Shikamaru Iruka said, looking towards the zoned-out Nara with a stern gaze. Shikamaru looked at the teacher lazily, giving a small grunt to show that he understood. The students started moving around, each of them bringing their lunches as they walked over to whatever group they normally had lunch with. Naruto too allowed his lunch, opened the window and jumped out. Seeing as Naruto had no real friends in the academy, Naruto preferred to eat outside. After he ate lunch, he would usually train in the academy training grounds for a bit before class started. Naruto made his way to a nearby tree that he liked and sat down under it. Naruto's favorite part of the academy day was lunch, and being able to relax under his favorite tree, away from the loud voices of the academy's 2 legendary banshees. After he finished eating, he walked over to the academy targets and worked profusely on his shuriken and kunai throwing, both in its aim and power. He practiced for a few minutes before he felt something behind him. Turning ever so suddenly, he saw Hinata a few feet from him, which elicited a small leap from the lightly lilac-eyed heiress. "Oh, Hinata, I didn't mean to frighten you," Naruto said to her, Hinata's face reddening from shyness. "Is there anything you require from me?" Hinata was startled by Naruto's question, not used to anyone other than the branch family of the Hyuga clan, asking her if they could do anything for her. The thought of having Naruto do something for her seemed appealing, like a knight in shining armor. She thought, but she didn't want to abuse Naruto's generosity. I was just wondering if Iai liked the gift I gave Iai," Hinata asked, her pointer fingers poking each other in their signature sign of nervousness. She wouldn't tell him that she had actually made that herself, but she did hope that with all the extra effort she put into the scarf, that Naruto would really appreciate it. "Oh yay, it's so great Hinata, thank you. Damn, I wish I had gotten something for you as well." "He wishes he got something for me Okami, I can feel myself getting faint." "No, stay strong Hinata, you have to ask him about her." "So Naruto, I noticed that you have been spending time with Somian after school." "Whoa is she?" Hinata said, her shyness and stutter increasing tenfold due to the conversation. Hinata couldn't quite explain it, she should be happy that Naruto had made a friend, but Hinata just couldn't stand the thought of the Kumo girl hanging around her blonde. "Oh, that's Mabui. She's really cool, she's from Kumo, her favorite food is ramen, and she's super funny. And she's got a super cool shinobi dad, and she's a really good Kenichi. She has to go back to Kumo tomorrow though." Naruto ranted, faster than most people could even process words. Hinata however hung on to his every word, and her emotions were going crazy. "Why do I feel so angry at this Mabui girl for being Naruto's friend? I should feel happy for them. She seems like the perfect friend for him as well. But all I can feel is hate for her, but it's okay, she has to go back to Kumo tomorrow, and with luck, never see Naruto again." "That's great Naruto," Hinata said, louder than she normally spoke and her stutter gone, too excited about the Kumo girl leaving to notice her anxiety. "I'm sorry that she has to leave tomorrow." "Yay, it's too bad. But we're going to be sending each other letters, and we'll definitely visit each other I think, so it'll be fine. I think it'd be really cool if we were able to see each other on missions when we become shinobi as well," Naruto said, once again not realizing the horrible thoughts that he was putting into the Hyuga clan heir's head. "That bitch." "Naruto," Hinata Ruka called, quickly getting the attention of the academy students. "It's time for the spars." Naruto and Hinata walked towards the sparring ring where most of the students were already gathered. They all formed a circle around the ring, and one by one Iruka started the spars. Most of them were civilian against civilian or clan against clan, except for when Kiba was put up against a brown-haired Sasuke fangirl named Anzu, who beat Kiba to the ground with one punch, after he insulted the raven-haired Uchiha. Finally came the spar that for some unknown reason to any of the kids always happened. Naruto Uchiha and Sasuke Uchiha, please step into the ring. The lilac-eyed blonde and the black-eyed Uchiha both stepped into the ring, the latter glaring at the former. Whenever somebody called Naruto with that surname, Sasuke always got more angry than he already was. They both made the seal of confrontation, and a second later Iruka shouted begin. Sasuke began running towards Naruto with the most speed he could manage, intent on putting down his only obstacle to being the top student in the academy. He sent a fist to Naruto aimed for his face, and Naruto quickly stepped to the side. Naruto grabbed the arm that Sasuke had extended, spun himself around with the other boy, and threw Sasuke to the other end to the ring. Naruto could have thrown him out of the ring, and therefore won the match easily, but he knew that that would only anger him more. So no choice other than to give him a bit of what he wanted. Sasuke twisted himself in the air and landed quite gracefully, and took off once again at the blonde. He threw a punch with his right fist, this time aimed for Naruto's abdomen, which Naruto swatted away with his left arm. While Naruto was doing that, Sasuke smirked while he brought his left foot for a kick, and was surprised when Naruto blocked that as well with his new arm. Damn, Sasuke thought as he took a small leap away from Naruto, I had enough trouble dealing with him when he only had one arm. Sasuke grew a little more angry at that, and once again charged Naruto, hoping that he could overwhelm Naruto with either strength or speed. Sasuke came at his enemy with everything he had, pushing himself harder and harder to try and finish him. And by every passing second, he grew more frustrated at the fact that he couldn't seem to touch the blonde. They were both using the Uchiha Interceptor Fist, so why was it that Naruto wasn't having any trouble fighting him? He had used the clan's Taijutsu ever since before the academy. There shouldn't be any reason that this Uchiha wannabe could use it so flawlessly. Come on Sasuke, stop holding back, I love you, one pink-haired cheerleader screamed, irking the blonde girl next to her. Don't listen to her Sasuke, I'm the one for you, she screamed in response. Soon enough, the entire female population of the class, save one dark blue-haired girl, were screaming their words of infatuation and encouragement. Naruto, throughout this whole ordeal, had been fairly focused and calm. 3 years ago, not only would he have been beaten by Sasuke before he could even know what happened, but would have grown upset and jealous at everyone cheering for his opponent rather than him. But now, the only thing Naruto felt in this situation was annoyance that none of his classmates were taking this seriously. Naruto wouldn't lie and say he was the most mature person, but they were training to be shinobi, damn it. This wasn't a popularity contest, it was training for situations where it would be a fight to the death. Deciding that he had been at this long enough, Naruto went in, finally going on the offensive. Naruto ran towards the raven-haired pain in the ass, and took a leap as his leg extended. Sasuke smirked as he saw the kick coming, knowing that he could easily counter it. Sasuke put his hands up and caught the foot before it could kick him away. Sasuke was smiling more than he normally did, but that stopped when he saw Naruto's own smile. Before Sasuke could do anything about it, Naruto had used his free leg to kick Sasuke in the face, while his hands were occupied, freeing himself of the Uchiha clan prick, while said Uchiha went flying away a couple of meters and out of the ring. Naruto Uchiha wins the match. Iruka shouted over the screams of the many females screaming at Naruto, most saying that he definitely cheated, or that there's no way that Sasuke had given this spar his all. Naruto had grown used to these shouts and claims from the many times he and Sasuke had sparred. If his memory served correctly, this made it 16-13 in Naruto's favor. Not that Naruto had counted all the spars that he and Sasuke had ever had. That'd be ridiculous. It was just a habit he had picked up when his only goals were to beat Sasuke and become Hokage. Back then, the scores had been drastically different, more around 100 in Sasuke's favor. But Naruto had quickly caught up and surpassed Sasuke. Damn it, how is he this strong? I'll never be able to prove myself to father, if I can't even beat this non-Uchiha. Sasuke was trembling as his thoughts grew angrier and angrier, while Naruto merely walked over the fallen student and held down his hand in a silent offer to help Sasuke up. Black eyes met shining lilac, and Sasuke swatted Naruto's hand away and stood up, walking away from the blonde as his fists clenched. Alright, everyone back in the classroom, we still have lessons. Needless to say, most of the students groaned. Meanwhile, hidden in the trees was a man dressed in a black-hooded cloak and a mask. He stood from his spot and disappeared, intent on relaying his findings to Lord Danzo. 8 hours until Shisui's death. Shisui was waiting outside the academy, nervously tapping his foot while Itachi stood to the side of him, his eyes looking more tired than ever. They watched as the academy students filed out of the building, looking for their chaperones, so that they could go back to their regular lives. As he watched them all, Shisui couldn't help but feel angry at many of the civilians, as well as a few of the clan members, as he heard them talk and whisper about Naruto, as soon as he was seen walking outside the academy. And once the kids made it to them, he heard nothing but rude comments about how his brother had unfairly beaten Sasuke again in a spar. No matter what the two of them did, Naruto and Shisui just couldn't get the village to see that Naruto was someone worthy of their respect. The people of Konoha were ignorant, and had long since ingrained their hatred for the Kyuubi into Naruto. No matter what they did to show them that they were wrong, they continued to treat him unfairly and pushed their children to feel the same way. And these were the people that Shisui had been enlisted to save. Shisui he heard Naruto scream once he spotted his older brother, going into a slight jog until he reached him. Thanks for picking me up, but I actually have to go meet Mabui at Ichiraku's. Is it okay if I do that? Shisui smiled at that, remembering the friend that Naruto had invited to his birthday dinner, and he had thoroughly enjoyed the show. Shisui had made fun of Naruto for Hinata, liking him that very same day, and only a couple hours later is Shisui witnessing Naruto with another girl. Not only that, but it seemed that both of them felt similarly. Not that either of them could tell, considering that Naruto was 10 and Mabui was only 9, but Shisui could very clearly see both of their cheeks turning red multiple times throughout the night. Naruto was turning into quite the ladies' man indeed. Although Shisui hoped that Naruto would just try and find one girl, instead of going off to try and be a womanizer much like the Sannin he had once met and despised. That should be fine, Naruto, it is her last day after all. Just make sure you two don't blow something up for your date, Shisui said, getting a very big blush from Naruto. We are not dating, Shisui, Naruto shouted, his blush taking up his entire face and his voice causing quite a few people to look over to them, particularly one small Hyuga girl. Itachi actually moved away from the two of them when Naruto shouted, causing the blonde to look quite sheepish. Maybe not now, Naruto, but just give it time. Now run along, if you're gonna go hang out with Mabui, then I have some errands I can run, Shisui said as his hands motioned for Naruto to shoot. Naruto gave Shisui a slight glare, but ran off nonetheless. Now, time to prepare for the Kodomatsukami. With Naruto at Ichiraku's. Naruto sat at the counter inside the ramen stand, his hands fiddling with each other as he waited for his friend to show up. She was only a minute late if the clock on the wall was right, but for some unknown reason Naruto was still nervous. His eyes kept darting back and forth between the entrance of the stand and the clock on the wall. Looks like someone's getting nervous, Aim said from the other side of the counter, as she and her father worked on making the noodles. Is someone a little fidgety for their date today? Naruto glared at the older girl, about to state that he and Mabui weren't dating, until something better came to mind. Oh, yeah, and how's asking Shisui out going for you, he said with a smirk, satisfied when Aim grew a very embarrassed red face. It's not my fault that there's never a good time to bring it up, he's just always so busy, she shouted, causing Tucci to look over to the two of them with an amused smile. Well, he should be at the house, probably preparing for a mission. Alone, Naruto said, the last word with a wink, causing the already red Aim to start turning new shades of red. I don't think there could possibly be a better time to set a date with him. Or are you too busy? As AM started to sputter random sounds and nonsense, Naruto looked off to Tucci and gave the man a knowing look. Tucci returned the look with a thumbs up and his signature smile, and joined the unspoken mission. AM isn't busy at all, isn't that right, AM? Tucci said, sending a sly look towards his daughter. When AM looked ready to defend herself, he put in the second part of his plan. In fact, take the rest of today and tomorrow off. AM, a girl as young as yourself shouldn't be wasting her time with her old father, when the love of her life is all by himself. You have your whole life to make Raymond, but you might only have a moment with Shisui. WWHAT, I never said he was the love of my life. You guys are just making this up now, AM shouted, waving an accusatory ladle against her father. After a moment though, her arm and ladle lowered, and the expression on her face changed to one of nervousness. Besides, he's a renowned feared by all the elemental nations. Why would he lower himself to a lowly ramen chef? Hey, Naruto said, quite loudly, getting the attention of both Ichirakus. Don't ever say that about yourself, AM. Any shinobi worth their kunai would be lucky to have you, and appreciate it every day. AM softened at that, and Naruto grew a little calmer. And if you really need to know, the only reason Shisui hasn't asked you out himself is because he doesn't know how to act around one particular ramen chef he likes. With that, AM's face grew to a new height of excitement and happiness. You really mean that, she said, her face leaning closer to the source of the amazing news, only getting a happy nod from the 10-year-old blonde. I have to go, she shouted as she all but leapt over the counter, not even bothering to take off her apron as he ran out of the stall, and in the direction of the Uchiha compound. As she was running off, Mabui finally entered the stall, looking confused by the ramen chef running out of the stall. Where's she running off to, the young girl asked simply. Nowhere. Tucci and Naruto both said, sharing a small laugh with each other, before Naruto and Mabui decided to order 3 miso ramen with extra beef each, with Shisui and Itachi. Shisui was lying down on the couch of his and Naruto's home, a soft pillow supporting his head, while he and Itachi mentally prepared for the mission that would be occurring in a few hours' time. Shisui was staring at the ceiling, thoughts flowing in and out of his mind, faster than he could properly comprehend them, while Itachi was reading Naruto's copy of the Tale of the Utterly Gutsy Ninja, written by the legendary Sanin Jiraiya. So I heard Naruto beat Sasuke again in a Taijutsu match at the academy, Itachi suddenly said, breaking the older Uchiha out of his thoughts. Am I to assume that his training is coming along well? Shisui brought his sight down from the ceiling and looked around the rest of the house, uninterested in it. He had had this house for all of his 18 years of life, inheriting it from his brother Obito when he had died. Shisui had no memories of Obito, his brother having died when he was only 2 years old himself, and his parents had been dead for much longer. He had been taken care of by his grandmother, the wife of Kagami Uchiha, who had sadly long outlived her husband, in this house up until he had just barely turned 7 years old, when his grandmother had died of old age. Yay, it's going great. Naruto had been very skilled with the interceptor fist with only one arm, but he's been working as much as possible over the last couple of days with his new arm. It's just about second nature to him by now. Though he still has a long ways to go before he's up to our level, so we don't need to worry too much right now at least. Shisui remarked, trying to lighten the serious mood by making a small joke, though he imagined that was why Itachi brought up Naruto. Talking about his younger brother always calmed him down. Shisui remembered asking his grandmother about his older brother and parents quite a bit when he was younger, and from what he had gathered, the world seemed to think that they were insignificant. Despite being the direct son of Kagami Uchiha, his father had never risen above Chunin, nor did he desire to, according to his grandmother. And his mother was a simple housewife. His only dream was to take care of the 2 children she gave birth to, having sadly died giving birth to him. His father had died in the Third Shinobi War, being ambushed by ninja from Iwa, while saving a squad of genin, which had allowed them to live. I see. And how is his shuriken jutsu and kinjutsu training coming along? I'm just hoping I didn't buy him that tanto in vain. Shisui let out a small laugh at that. Typical of Itachi to think of something like that. Don't you worry about that. Naruto has been trying to get the hang of using the tanto, but he had always had trouble using weapons other than shuriken and kunai. Naruto's already incredibly skilled with those, but I doubt he'll ever become a master in kinjutsu. It's just not that well suited for him. Shisui had been grateful when he had first met Kakashi, the owner of Obito's left eye. It had become a lost belief, but Shisui had always liked to hope that Obito's spirit lived on in Kakashi, even if it were just to fellow child had wished to know his lost brother. And he was especially glad to have taken in Naruto, and be able to have the one thing he always wished he had more than anything. A family. That is alright, many of the greatest shinobi don't use kinjutsu. As long as he is familiar with it, he should be just fine, and of the ninjutsu. That was Naruto's greatest weakness in their training so far, and it caused Shisui a great deal of stress just thinking about it. Naruto had so far only mastered the basic Academy 3, and the Great Fireball Jutsu, all with one hand, and all only being accomplished through months of training and practice, and sheer determination and willpower. And ever since he had gotten the wooden arm, it had been driving the two of them crazy, that not even with both hands was it getting much better. Shisui had always assumed that it had been the attempt at trying to use one-handed seals that prevented Naruto from being able to use ninjutsu, but now, he was stumped. No progress so far, and he's still trying to hide the secret training from me. I honestly have no idea what could be the problem. Now that he's got the new arm, there shouldn't be anything getting in the way of his chakra flow. But that's not stopping Naruto from trying his damn hardest. Itachi nodded at Shisui's statement, all the while thinking about his own brother's progress and behavior. That is a good trait to have, he said in reply after a couple seconds of silence. If Naruto keeps acting and training like that, he'll surpass us quicker than you might think. They both stayed silent after that, and both went back into their thought. Although Itachi was reading one of his favorite books, his mind was still focused on his own little brother. Sasuke and Naruto had never been on the greatest of terms, but ever since Naruto had been adopted into the Uchiha clan, and especially since he had risen in skill, Sasuke's dislike for the blonde had grown to a level that Itachi had never seen a childhood rivalry go. He was beginning to show signs of darkness, such as his obsession on getting stronger for the sole purpose of putting down an enemy. It didn't help that Sasuke couldn't handle the fact that Naruto was more skilled in the Uchiha arts than a blood Uchiha was. Naruto had mastered the Great Fireball Jutsu before Sasuke had managed it, and Naruto did it with one hand. That event in particular had caused Sasuke to become more angry than Itachi had ever seen him. Sasuke was becoming a mirror image of their father, and it was worrying Itachi to no end. So how are you handling it? Itachi asked bluntly, getting to the point that they were so desperately trying to avoid. Shisui's first response was to lose the smile on his face, his eyes going back to the ceiling he was staring at previously. How am I supposed to be handling it? We've been trying to stop this revolt for years, and now not only is one of the village elders and his foundation helping the clan with it, but they plan to use my brother to accomplish it. I almost want to abandon the clan at this point. But Naruto loves it. The way he sees it, the clan is the reason he's at where he is today. To him, the clan is what gave him a reason to live. Naruto and I are family because I was part of the Uchiha clan. And whether or not that's true, I will do whatever I can to protect the name of the clan. At the very least, then Naruto can stay proud of the name. Itachi was once again impressed by the bond his best friend and Naruto shared. There were very few people in this shinobi world that would go so far for someone they weren't even related to, and yet, Shisui and Naruto would go to the ends of hell for each other. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door, and both Shisui and Itachi looked over, very confused. It was not often that they had visitors, and they couldn't feel a chakra signature off the person at the door, most likely meaning that they were a civilian. Civilians never visited them. The two of them walked towards the door, Itachi sticking to walls and roof, so as to hide in a position where if need be, he could jump in and assist him with the potentially hostile enemy. They reached the door, and once Shisui was certain that Itachi was hidden, and his left hand could easily reach a kunai if necessary, he opened the door. Thanks for watching my video. Support the wordsmith. Fanfic link in the description. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe and comment below your favorite part. The after what happened all those years ago.